Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we're here following a Giants spanking. 28-6, the Giants fall to the Minnesota Vikings on their first game of their 100th season, and we finally got a chance to see why we wore these circus uniforms to this game.
It looks like our first game ever, not our first game of our 100th season.
So I was trying to decide if this game was worse than the 40-0 loss in the pouring rain against Dallas in last year's opener. And, on the surface level, it was a little bit better. In other respects, it's kind of worse when you consider, Andrew Thomas didn't get hurt in this game, and we had higher expectations for this year. Just the fact that I even had to think about that is bad.
To me, it's a no-brainer. This is worse. Like the Andrew Thomas thing.
You weren't there. So.
I'm talking about just the experience. Like the experience of being there. I'm talking about just the game itself. This was worse. I mean, it's too bad because, we were at the tailgate. Everybody was excited. In the stadium before the game, it was packed. The crowd really seemed to be into it. And then 3 plays later, that was that.
Yeah, I mean, I talked with just about everybody I could and sometimes I just talk and catch up. Sometimes, we're drinking and laughing about non-topics. Giants always come up, but I made a point to ask everyone how they felt because it's been a whole year, a lot of off-season stuff, a lot of change, haven't seen everybody. The general mood was pretty positive for this game. There were some people that felt that these were not only winnable games the first 2 of the year, but almost must win. There was a lot of sentiment of how important it was to take hold of these, quote unquote winnable games early in the season and get off to a fast start. And it flipped pretty early. Like you said.
Yeah. I mean, I'll get into it now, Grump, before we get into the actual analysis of the game or anything. But, I got a message, for someone I work with, and she's been a season ticket holder for 30 years, and her dad had season tickets longer. And all she sent in the message was, that was disappointing. And I read that, and I thought about it for a bit. Disappointing. To be disappointing, you got to be kind of surprised at the outcome of that, to be disappointed. And, if you're a regular subscriber to this show and you listen, and we really appreciate that you listen, you know that I have been much more the pessimist about this Giant 2024 season than Grump has been. So I didn't walk out of that stadium disappointed. I'm just numb. And don't confuse that with being apathetic. Because, I still care very much about this team. I care about this season. I care what happens going forward. I'm just numb at this point. And maybe just because I was preparing myself off season, but I'm just numb to this bullshit. And, all of these signs are pointing to it can potentially be another wasted season and 4 months of just watching bad football. I really want this show, Grump, to be, focusing on us each week, discussing our thoughts and our reactions to, watching a team week by week heading towards a playoff run and potentially towards a championship. But this is the 4th time now we're going to have these, these existential discussions and questions about, why are we one of the worst teams in the league? And we're the laughingstock of this league again. And I'm tired of it. So again, I got to keep asking these same questions, what the fuck is wrong with this team? I mean, is it as simple as, well, we just need a new quarterback? Or are we the victim of just continued bad luck with injuries? So when we draft someone like an Evan Neal, he just keeps getting hurt and never develops to what he should be. Or, Daniel Jones keeps getting hurt, or quarterback X, or Andrew Thomas, or whoever. Do we just keep hiring the wrong guys to build and coach this team? I mean, what the fuck is wrong with us? And, this is a conversation I want to have after week 17. Well, we didn't make the playoffs, but it's September 9th, and here we go again. So I'm ready to talk about this game and where we go from now. But I'm just numb.
I don't think you're alone either. I spent a lot of time after the game with my mouth shut and just kind of looking at other people's comments. And I'm gonna reference somebody else's comment later on as we get into this team here. But one thing that stuck out was I don't know why this stuck out, because it's like the lowest common denominator of whatever. It's not really poignant, but for some reason it resonated with me. I think it was somebody responding to Jordan Renan saying, quoting Brian Dable saying, it's on me or whatever. Um, it was something like Brian Dable keeps saying it's on me, keeps blaming himself, and someone said, "Fuck Brian Dable, fuck this team, another year of this shit." And for some reason, I guess it's just because it was like, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you blaming yourself. I don't want to take. I don't care. I don't care whose fault it is. This is a disaster, and that's what this game was. This game was an absolute disaster. Um, you know, you mentioned you being the more pessimist, me being the optimist. I had a moment of pessimism this offseason, a strong
Mm-hmm.
one, and it was after the training camp practice, and it looked a lot like this. Where
Mm-hmm.
I started getting optimistic was the preseason games didn't look like that. So and again, like, I'm not trying to put too much on the preseason, but I'm also trying to not put that practice over a preseason game either. So my I don't know. The preseason games seem to align with the moves that were done in the offseason. It caused some optimism, but this when I said that the offense looked like a mess in the training camp practice I went to, I got a lot of shit for that. A lot of people telling me stop analyzing practice, and I was like, I don't know, it's what it looks like, man. Like, you end up playing how you practice. So, you know, I agree. This is very much a like it's not even like I'm tired of excuse. I don't want to. I cannot bear to see something this horrendous again.
Yeah. I mean, the shirt I've been wearing ever since 2007 says talk is cheap, play the game.
Mm.
Tom Coughlin, that was his mantra for that first Super Bowl run and that win. And I am not one to have his smoke blown up my ass by comments that coaches and general managers and players say. I don't. Everybody wins the offseason. And the fact that Dable's taking responsibility, that should be the low bar of anything. But that means nothing to me. You know, you're ultimately responsible for the product that's on the field. And Joe Shane is responsible for putting those players in your hand to make that thing. This is a collective situation we are in right now. And I appreciate him being a man and standing up to it instead of making excuses, but that doesn't really solve or placate anybody. We spend a lot of time and a lot of money and going to 8 or 9 home games a year, watching those other 8 games at home, doing this show, fans talking about it, wasting breath and energy. It's not about words. It's about be an NFL team. Not every team's a Super Bowl contender, but be at least a competitive product. And that was, it's not a competitive product.
In that game, we sustained a couple of injuries. Carter Coughlin, this didn't happen in the game. This is just some clarity on his roster positioning right now. He has a torn pec. He's likely out for months. That might be the whole year. In warmups, Gunnar Olszewski re-injured his groin. He didn't play at all in this game.
Yep.
He will be out for weeks. Nick McLeod hurt his knee at some point. He's day-to-day. And Darius Slayton's in the concussion protocol, which could mean he's out for a while, or it could mean like one day. It really, it's too early to tell.
It's based on the situation. Yeah.
So I'm not even going to bother with stars and farts for this game. It's not worth it. Everyone has earned a collective fart, one big fart in the elevator that everyone can share and smell together.
I'm gonna give out a couple of farts and maybe even a star. So as we go along, but I'm not gonna do it as a separate thing because I have a huge collective fart which I'll give at the end of this analysis. But let's get started.
All right, so let's just kick it off right with the offense. Right, this is, for context, I believe the only offense to not score a touchdown in the NFL in Week 1.
Yeah, I mean, watching this Jet game, they even have a touchdown.
Yep.
Pretty
Every
amazing.
other team scored at least 10 points. The Giants did not. No touchdowns for this team. Look, We're going to get into the Daniel Jones stuff in a second, but let me just. There's a lot more to this loss than Daniel Jones, although I think he's probably the main culprit. The interior of this offensive line looked bad. It looked leaky. There was. It looked like guys that didn't get to practice a whole lot together, and
Thank
that
you. Thank you.
It as a unit. Again, this is what I said too at the training camp practice, is that like as a collective unit, the offense looked like they've just
Met each
gathered,
other.
like you had two captains out there and be like, I'll take Malik, I'll take Darius, I'll take, you know what I mean? Like you assemble a dodgeball team, and it looks like that they got some, we all know how to play football, they all know how to play their positions, but they've never played together at all. John Runyon got his ass kicked on a 3rd and 2 QB power. He just got absolutely blown up in the backfield. Greg Van Roten missed some blocks. I don't really understand a lot of stuff that happened in this game. And this is going to kind of go hand in hand. I think we're probably going to end up having an overall coaching conversation here. But
We are.
okay.
Because you remember, Grump, what I said before we started training camp, and before we started the first preseason game, my goal for training camp was not that we come out of there injury-free, which obviously we want, was for this team to be ready to play week 1. And what I saw yesterday was not a team ready to play week 1. That is a coaching failure.
I think they looked absolutely unprepared. Specifically, the offense looked unprepared. We'll get to the defense, but they didn't. What's really baffling to me is it felt like guys who had been preparing were not part of this. I don't know the snap count for Daniel Bellinger, but Theo Johnson got a lot of snaps in this game, and he had some moments that were good, but also looked completely fucking lost on some. He missed 2 blocks on one play, which is incredible. He also had a bad drop. I don't understand, like,
what are we doing in training camp?
I don't understand what part of my optimism, like I said, was like, they were doing a lot of the right things. Everything they worked on in the spring was just like thrown in the garbage. They did the offensive game plan that I wanted to not see. I knew it was going to be boring and people don't want to see this, but this is a matchup where I would run the ball down their throats and use the play action off of it to hit deep shots, and then hit the underneath that to, when they start getting afraid of the deep shots, you hit Wandale and Slayton underneath and Bellinger underneath. They decided that they were going to play this game horizontally. It was the one thing I don't understand. Like, Brian Flores is going to play right up to the line of scrimmage. You play horizontally, you're going to lose. And it looked bad. I mean, there's nothing more embarrassing than the pick 6 inside your own, 10.
Yeah.
And that was 100% what I was afraid of. At that point, we had already run 3 wide receiver screens or more than that, or some variation of somebody catching the ball in the backfield in motion or something like that. I don't believe any of them went for more than 4 yards. It's just not an effective play. I don't know. Go ahead. You talk about the offense before I pop a blood vessel.
Yeah. I mean... we can bash Daniel Jones all he wants. He played a poor game, obviously, but this offensive line is just not very good too. I mean, they held their own as best they could pass blocking in the first half. By the second half, Daniel Jones was either running for his life or running into trouble. I mean, it was kind of a collective fault of the two of them. The running game never really had any sort of sustained success at all. It's just. And just watching, I think I made the comment to our buddies we sit next to. I'm like, these routes these receivers running look like a Pop Warner league. Just very basic things. There's nothing. We were not game planning at all to win or to attack or to attack their weaknesses. It's kind of what you said, but it was just very safe, predictable, and it makes me wonder why. And I think it all goes back to Daniel Jones. That makes me wonder. Are they specifically protecting him, and why are they protecting him, the coaching staff? I don't know. I mean, we heard he's completely healthy. I mean, it's ironic that Sam Darnold was the other quarterback who in this same building said he thought he saw angels, and the guy who saw the angels today was Daniel Jones. Is he just become David Carr? where his confidence is completely shot. I, this just looks like an offense that's just afraid to make mistakes or afraid to not make mistakes, and that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible that, this is going to sound like being a Daniel Jones apologist, but I do think that his confidence is shot. The difference is that he wasn't excellent to begin with. He just had some
Yeah,
good traits
I
here
don't
and
think that's
there.
being an apologist at all. I think that's being a realist. It's
I,
so that's not a criticism, Dan. Like it's a fact. It's like if you have a sore shoulder, that's not being an apologist. Well, he's got a sore shoulder. He's a sore shoulder. If he, and there's a lot of things that could probably be impacting this confidence. The fact that he might get killed on every play, the fact he's coming back from major surgery, the fact that the entire nation saw how his team was trying to trade to replace him. That could be something that's affecting his confidence too in some sort of subconscious way. There's a lot of things that are, and all, we've heard when, we've done everything we can to screw with this kid. Well, now this is year 6 and it's all compounding. And I just think we see a guy that is just damaged goods up between the ears as much as he is on the body.
he looked positively terrible in this game. He
Mm-hmm.
couldn't move in the pocket. He couldn't identify blitzes. For one thing, he failed to throw the ball with any sort of balls behind it. Everything was getting skipped into guys, or they were having to leap to go get it. And again, like some of it, it's easy to just make a hello light reel, um, and say that they're all just misses by Daniel Jones. But again, this looked like guys that weren't comfortable playing together. He's expecting someone to sit in the zone, they keep running. He expects them to keep running, they sit. He's trying to lead guys away from hits to make the catch, they alligator arm it. Everybody looked bad, but Daniel Jones did not look good. And what's worse, his running at this point just looked pedestrian in this game. It
Yeah.
didn't look like a real threat. It just looked like a guy that has the ability to run. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
in the past, he was running at the same speed as Lamar Jackson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to see that from him ever again. It's at least, I shouldn't have to think that, it's a coming off of an ACL in October. So, it's normal to have some sort of lingering, like, oh, you feel like you're 100%, but really it's 85, that kind of thing. And that's probably true. But at this point, I think that so much of it is his confidence, as well as the fact that his ability just was never great to begin with.
And I don't want to get into this, do we bench him or not argument, because again, the worst argument you can make as a fan or anybody is, how can it be worse? And
Oh, yeah, it
we have
can.
seen it on this team specifically, how much worse it can be. We've gone to the point of coaches getting fired because they have to do quarterback sneaks because it's so bad.
Yes.
And everybody all of a sudden has amnesia and forgot those couple of series that Drew Lock played in that preseason game where he was shit. And no, Tommy DeVito's not coming out. He's the third team guy. He's an emergency guy unless both these guys get specifically hurt. So we this is something that that this can be an evaluation of our front office, that we made the decision that we are rolling with Daniel Jones, and we didn't bring in a backup capable of, if we need this guy to take over, not a guy to get us through 3 weeks, but if this guy is not looking good or playing poorly, that we can bench him and bring him in, and we're gonna have to roll with him.
I I I can't get over how poorly, I went into this, I'm going into this season with what feels like a low bar in comparison to everybody else and what I want to see. People ask, like, what does success mean for this team? What does it mean for Brian Dable and Joe Shane in year 3? What does this mean to you? Was a question that was asked to Joe Shane by the press, when Mara said he wanted to see significant improvement and stuff. And I feel like among everybody else that's given their opinion, I had a low bar. I just wanted to see points. This is exactly what we saw last year. This is no better.
It's no better than we saw in the preseason. It's no better we saw last year with Tommy fucking DeVito as your quarterback, with Tyrod Taylor as your quarterback. It's the same thing.
Flipping over to the defense, just to stay on that philosophy there, I had mentioned that, I know that they made the significant investments in the offense this year, not the defense. They got a premier edge rusher to solidify and make something out of a defensive line, and they drafted a safety. That's like pretty much the investment that they've had in the defense this year. So this is exactly why my philosophy was like, I'm not really worried about wins and losses, but I need to see points being scored. You know what I mean? Like, you can fix a defense in one offseason if free agents know they're coming to a team that scores 30 points a game. They will come here. That being said, the first half was shaky but okay. I mean, getting out of the first half only giving up 14 points is not insurmountable. I think if the offense had given them any sort of breathing room, that could have been, a perfectly acceptable first half defense. That being said, it wasn't great. On the first drive they had a sack and a forced fumble. That was like the best thing that happened.
Yeah, sure.
The first touchdown was on a drive that was sustained on what I would consider a pretty rough defensive pass interference call.
It was doubly rough because if I recall, it was like 1st and 20 or 1st and 15 to start the drive too.
It was something like that. Yeah.
And they were bailed out, and that really was one of the turning points in the game, basically. I think because it was the play happened on our side of the field, and the first thing I yelled out was, "That's offensive pass interference!" And all of a sudden we looked and we saw them pointing that way. It's like, oh boy, that's going to go against us, and then you're putting them behind the 8 ball, and then
it was like a 40-yard penalty.
Sure.
Following that, they allowed a 99-yard drive for a touchdown, and then they escaped on another drive, forcing a punt on 4th and 1 at midfield that Kevin O'Connell could have just went for. I think if I really had to pinpoint things that were unexpectedly bad with the defense, the pass rush wasn't great, but it's always going to be less good when you're playing from behind, and they were playing from behind the whole game. At no point did it feel like the offense was threatening to come back in this game. So, I'll mention the pass rush, but I'm not totally surprised that it didn't show up in this game, though it probably should have, considering their offensive line. But the biggest things for me was the tackling angles were super aggressive, and the contain was really bad in this game. A lot of stuff making it to the outside. How many times did they run the same bootleg play where Sam Darnold moved outside and you have everything flowing to that side of the field? We fell for it every time. Every single time.
Every time. You were calling it as it was happening. Like, here it is again. Here it is again.
I'm going to reiterate that I can live with this defense and its growing pains. We have a lot of youth in the secondary.
And we're changing system altogether. Remember that this is game 1 of a whole new defense, a new defensive coordinator, new terminology, new everything.
So I'm not happy with the defensive performance. That would be a lie. I am not even okay with the defensive performance, but I can live with that. Given, this defense is going to need an offense that scores points to help them out. The best defense is a good offense. So,
well, something, Grump, when a backup quarterback goes, what do you start off, 12 for 12 or 9 for 9 or something ridiculous?
I think it was 9 for 9.
That's no bueno.
And I think the one incompletion was a drop.
That's no bueno.
That first incompletion was a drop.
Yeah, no good.
I think for the first time, felt like, this is getting back to the unprepared thing. This is the first time where I really feel like Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen were not really ready yet. I don't know. There's no excuse for it. But they felt unprepared to handle a hurt punt returner getting hurt in this game. Darius Slayton ended up going back there. He muffed a punt at one point. Gunner never even played at all. They felt unable to adjust at halftime in any regard. They felt unprepared to handle blitzes against a Brian Flores defense. They felt not ready. That's it. This was somebody going outside in a rainstorm wearing their boxers. I don't know.
I'm starting to get a creeping feeling in my head that this is Joe Judge 2.0. Like, start off, the first year, success, and then by year three, we're falling into this abyss because now, okay, now, we're already going through all the checkpoints of, okay, fire the defensive coordinator, don't like him. I'm taking over for play calling. You're running out of all your coin for, your safety valves already. And, was just that playoff year just a situation where we just got lucky in a lot of one score games and just won and didn't make mistakes and had one great playoff game? Because, you know, in the NFL, sometimes one team plays great and plays a team that might be better than them. Are we going to hang our hat on that as a legacy, or that's the way we are, or is that just the outlier? Because this team has not appeared to be well prepared and well coached since then. Not even just necessarily X's and O's, play calls, scheme, but just organizationally. You know, I'm, and this is not a fire anybody yet, but it is now time to really, open up the discussions and really open up is this yet again, is this the regime that's going to lead us, to the promised land, or do we have to really, think about it? And I think I've hit I'm thinking about it stage. Can't believe it.
El Jefe had the tweet that I think was succinct and perfectly exemplified how I felt about this.
Mm-hmm.
The tweet was, "The Giants are not a serious football team." Look, John Mara is not shy to talk about the things that bother him with the Giants. Empty seats, bad press, booing, poor performance. It's time for him to wake up, dude. MetLife Stadium is a loser stadium that is home to a loser football team whose season ticket holders use their tickets as an investment only, and then they sell their tickets to loser fans that either support the opponent or are longtime caller, first-time listener.
Listen, the Minnesota Vikings are not a national team. They are not the Packers. They are not the Steelers. There was a lot of people doing the skull chant, really from the beginning of the game. And by the time the fourth quarter, we had 4 bada bing chicks dressed in Viking uniforms in front of us. I mean, you're telling me that there's all of a sudden all these Viking fans coming? And you're absolutely right. All that stuff you mentioned, the things that Mara doesn't like, bad press, booing. I don't give a shit about any of that stuff.
Well, hang on. There's a variety of culprits throughout like the lifespan of MetLife Stadium, but none are more central than Mara himself. I think the current state of the Giants can be traced back to one singular decision that he made, and that was choosing Jerry Reese and Mark Ross over Tom Coughlin. Bear with me for a minute here.
I know where you're going, but go ahead.
It seems that during Coughlin's tenure, there was a disconnect between the front office that assembled the roster and Tom Coughlin, the coach that dressed the roster and put a product on the field. I can remember when John Mara said, "It took us far too long to find out that Jarrell Jernigan could play," because he had one good game where Tom Coughlin finally threw him in there, either due to injury or whatever. We quickly found out after that the rest of the league also thought that Jarrell Jernigan couldn't play because he never really ended up playing anywhere ever. Reese and Ross put together calamitous draft after calamitous draft, and Coughlin would play who he felt gave him the best shot to win. And when it finally became apparent that Reese and Ross were not a winning formula through another head coaching failure, Mara stuck to his Giants family and brought Dave Gettleman back into the fold. We've talked about that shit enough, but now enter Shane and Dable into the fold. There's plenty of criticism there, but I stand by a lot of what has been done by these guys, right? Like starting with Shane revamping the draft room and gutting the building of Mara's sycophants and story leakers. But it's been over a decade now. And a good analogy here is losing weight, right? Like if it took someone 15 years to put on a ton of weight, it's going to take more than a year to lose it. Now, only in this country could we invent a product that would ruin a weight loss equals hard work analogy, but there is really no Ozempic for rebuilding a football team. It needs patience, and in the interim, we all have to suffer empty seats, bad press, booing, and poor performance. I don't want to sit through that shit, and I don't blame anybody else that doesn't want to sit through that shit. But if this shit continues, there is always one Ozempic solution here, and that's tanking this season. I'm not saying after week 1 to do it, but I'm saying after month 1, if it doesn't look better, it's time to start considering it. Because you can fire Shane and you can fire Dable, but the next guy is going to have to come in and pick up the same busted pieces using the same dried tub of glue. It's not going to work. You made us sit through this, Mara. Like this has been festering a long, long time. It's going to take a long, long time of the things that you don't like to get over it, to scab over and heal. He's going to have to suffer all of the things that he can't stand. And every fan, go ahead and boo. I don't care that the players don't like being booed. That performance was horrendous. It is embarrassing. And John Mara gets to wear that 100th anniversary patch, and every time he looks at it, I hope he remembers how fucking shitty his team is because he let it rot for 15 years without fixing the actual solution. His front office was bad. He had a Hall of Fame head coach that he let walk. He chose someone else over them. End rant.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, only thing I can say to that is, this is not, I keep hearing from fans, either on Twitter or friends of mine of, I'm tired of the rebuilding. And we have never, in all of this time, fully committed to the rebuild. We've been half pregnant for 15 years. We still want to have a shot with Eli, even though we don't build an offensive line around him to support him. And even this past offseason, something, if you are ready to go after a quarterback and you want Drake May and you think he's your guy for the next decade plus, you fucking make a trade. And so what? For another first-round pick? That's fine. You got your guy. I have on the big screen here, I'm watching 49ers Jets. And why are the 49ers, been in Super Bowl contention for the past couple of years when they've been spending a lot of money on getting free agents to re-sign their own guys? They have a quarterback still on a rookie contract, which frees you so many assets to do other things. Daniel Jones, they made the decision to, and at the time I wasn't against it, but something, that's $40 million that's not being used, a chunk of that is not being used to make this team better. You have to if you need to rebuild, you have to pull the Band-Aid off and do it. The Giant fans say that, they say we're not patient or anything. They have been patient. Again, that stadium yesterday was sold out. There were Viking fans there. I said that, but in every NFL stadium, I've been to Lambeau, I've been everywhere, and there's always visiting fans around too. Especially in week 1, that tailgating scene was packed. They were ready to go. Fans have sat through a decade of garbage, and they're still believers, and they still want to believe. So and they also understand if they decide they're going to tank, you make an effort to do it, they will understand. They don't understand this and they won't accept this. Not really tanking, but the product looks like we are. And I don't know. It's, the problem is when you have at the very top, you can't fire an owner. You can fire a GM, you can fire a president, you can fire a head coach, you can fire everybody, you can cut players. It all starts in the culture at the top. And Mara's getting to be an old man now. He doesn't have much time left. I feel like I don't have much time left. That guy doesn't feel he has much time left. He should be doing everything he can. Sacrifice a year. Get your guy. Start over.
It's really frustrating because if you really paid attention to everything that's gone on in Mara's tenure here, it's like a kid who inherited his father's classic car and just decided he would continue getting a car wash every week and never, ever change the oil.
Mm-hmm. But, but the hubris, though, that a guy like this has is he can point to those 2 Super Bowl rings he has, which were under his guidance. So it's like, well, I know how to do this. So,
but that's the thing. When you look back at that Hard Knocks thing, remember that I think it was the last episode, the second to last episode, where he'd spent half the episode wandering around the building talking to anybody that would listen to him. Of like, yeah, it feels like, that Eli year. It feels like 20 years ago. You only feel that way because it's the only good thing that you were a part of. It was the only thing that you were there for that you can say that you kind of did, and that
And
everything, you know what I mean? Like,
and nobody has more like blue tinted glasses than the owner,
yeah,
more than any fan or any employee of them.
in no way did it feel like that. It didn't feel like that because in that year there was a guy that we all knew that you wanted. There was a consensus guy that you wanted. Here we were just struggling to figure out a solution to a terrible situation that we're in. Any solution. Do you want this guy, or this guy? Please, any. Any of those three would be good. You know, that's not the same.
Right.
The Giants didn't even want Phillip Rivers that year. It was going to be Eli or Ben Roethlisberger. They had their set of guys. There was a guy they wanted and a guy that they could roll with.
Mm-hmm.
It was not the same whatsoever this year.
And they didn't make a half-ass effort to get him.
No,
they got him.
That's my point. So, and also, you know, Joe Shane calls up Elliot Wolf or whatever the GM for the Patriots name is, and you know he's like, you know, we're really just content to sit here and take a quarterback unless you're going to knock my socks off. They weren't willing to do that because they didn't have a guy. Mm-hmm. They knew at 3 they were not going. I honest to God, you know, I know Jaden Daniels was the guy I liked. I think it was the guy that Dable liked. I know, you know, the focus was on Drake May during the Hard Knocks thing, but I think at that point they had to do that because they knew that was the only guy on the table at that time. Mm-hmm. They knew it. They did. They went through the walkthrough with the two owners. They felt very strongly that the draft would go the exact way that it went. Mm-hmm. So, you know, at this point, I you know, right now at this point after one game, I feel like it's not really on Joe Shane, this situation. You know, you can point to the Daniel Jones contract, but there's a lot of other things that went into that. You know, you had to pay somebody. They approached Saquon first. He wasn't willing to sign, and we'll never know if they signed Saquon if they were not going to be able to sign Daniel Jones and if they had a plan for that. Yeah, we'll never be able to know that.
That is a false equivalency, is because they signed Daniel Jones, so they couldn't say that is, I would say, categorically not true. I mean, if they really want, I didn't want to get into the Saquon Barkley conversation today because we all saw it, we all know, you all have your opinions about it, but if they really wanted him, he would still be on the team. They'd both still be on the team.
I mean the first time, but I mean when Daniel Jones got his contract and they franchise tagged Saquon. Yeah, what I'm saying is we'll never know if Daniel Jones ever got that contract if Saquon signs his extension that was offered to him in the middle of the year. We'll never know. Mm-hmm. It's possible that they don't. You know, Brian Dable, he has 3 games to show me an offense that starts to do something. Carmen Bracillo, I hate to say this to you, but like, you have your fucking work cut out for you because you know they weren't picking up stunts. John Runyon and Andrew Thomas failed to execute a stunt together, led to a horrible play. I mean, it was a shit fuck mess. I mean, this was not just the talent on the field. These are good free agents. These were high priced free agents that were brought in here, and again, they didn't look good.
And the smoke blown up our asses, and we all parroted too. New offensive line coach will correct all the sins of the past offensive line coach. You know, watch the overall technique and improvement working with this new coach.
I will say, you know,
this is also one thing before you go. This is overreaction Monday too.
Yes, this is an overreaction, but also, I mean, this was not losing 28-20. This was not. I mean, they're the only team that didn't score a touchdown. The only team in the league that didn't score a touchdown. And it didn't really ever feel like we were close. Even when we were geographically close to the end zone.
Yeah, I know, no kidding. I mean,
I will say about the offensive line, they looked sloppy in this game. They didn't look flat out untalented like they did last year. There were times where only one guy had let his guy kind of slip through. Daniel Jones found a way to run right at him. You know what I mean? Like, but collectively as a unit, this offense looked like shit. It wasn't just the quarterback. It wasn't just the offensive line. It wasn't just the receivers. It wasn't just the play calling. It was all of it. And the defense, you know, I'm willing to give a somewhat pass to, look, god awful. I mean, they really let Sam Darnold look like Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I hate to be the tank commander before September 11th, but
Oof.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, I've said the T word for a couple of years now that if there's no point, you might as well go all in on it. And
well, I mean, if you're
but
if you're
I
Joe
guess
Shane, right, and let's just say that you're not fired at the end of this year, you have to do. What else do? You brought in the offensive line guys. You brought in the receivers. You have two tight ends there that should be starters by the end of the year. You should have a duo of tight ends. You've got a decent running back room. What else can you do but change the quarterback? It's the one thing he hasn't touched.
yeah. And it's also a quarterback that wasn't he did not pick that quarterback. Yes, they re-signed him, but that was almost kind of like a hostage video. Like, yeah, kind of had to, right? Because what were the alternatives to not signing him? Who knows? Sam Darnold could be our starting quarterback, and that's not going to do anybody any good.
It's easy for Giants fans to say that that was 1 year in a bottle. It's easy for us to say that. It's hard for a new GM and coach to come in and be like, impress us. And then he goes out there and does everything
And
you ask
impresses
him to
us.
do. Yeah. You have to think at some point, it's like, this is the winning formula for Daniel Jones. This is what we needed to do all along. This is what he's. It's hard not to think that. So, yes, they re signed him. He was still their second choice. They went for Saquon Barkley first. So there is that.
I just don't.
But ultimately, at the end of that season, they were put in a position. It's like, how could you not sign this guy? I mean, like,
Yeah, so if they flip it and they sign Saquon and they franchise tag him, they're still going to work out a deal. I mean, I think the end of the day, I think people are too hung up on who is franchise, who they went to first and stuff.
I don't even care what the rest of the universe thinks.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and like I said, it's easy for us who have meticulously watched Daniel Jones from the outside in look bad for years. To say something like that, but when two guys come in there and they ask the world of him and he delivers, it's hard not to think that maybe this is just what he needed all along, was just the right coach. You know what I mean? So I can't really fault them for, especially because they're the ones in the building. I'm not. I can only look at stuff when they weren't the coach and GM.
Let's talk about something just as important as making the decision to sign him. The contract that he was signed to gave us the opportunity to be in the situation we are in right now. What is the worst case scenario? That he gets hurt and he's just ineffective, or he just starts to suck. We can get out of it. We are not Cleveland right now. People are acting like this is the Deshaun Watson contract and we have to give up $110 million of dead cap hit if we cut the guy or don't re-sign him or something. We're not nearly in that much of a problem that we can get out of this thing. That should be on the positive ledger of Joe Shane, which I don't think anyone wants to give him that credit for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a major cap guy, but they are still big cap hits, and we've had to change around his contract like twice already because we couldn't get our shit together under the cap. I think really,
but nothing that killed the spirit of what the deal was, that we could still move out. So
correct.
That's fine.
Yeah. So long as he doesn't get hurt, I guess.
Well, that also brings up an interesting question about, so he doesn't get hurt. At what time? When do you just bench the guy? Forget even about being non-productive and being a negative of just, we got to protect, the future of the team from a cap standpoint by just not playing him anymore and risking it.
In September, I think you start. It's either. I don't think that he took an unnecessary amount of hits. I think he took more hits than a quarterback usually does in a game that's good. But I think in a game that you lose 28-6, I don't think he took he didn't get sacked like 11 times in this game.
No.
I think that as long as he's not getting banged around in September, you don't worry about that. You pull him due to performance is the only time you pull him in September. October.
Yeah, what I said was, at what point do you consider doing that? I didn't say, do we should start thinking about that now?
Well, no. That I'm answering your question. I'm saying in September you pull him based on performance, or if he is taking a shitload of hits. If not, then you start worrying about it in October, November.
Yeah, because you beat Washington next week. All of a sudden, you're 1-1 and you're tied for the division lead potentially, and
right.
People feel differently. this fan base is a little fickle where all of a sudden, oh, maybe we were wrong. We don't have the yoke of overreaction Monday on our shoulders or something. But most likely we are headed down a dark path with this team this year. And I think there is just as much of a chance that he will be riding the pine as much for protecting our flexibility contract wise as much as him just sucking.
Well, yeah. Well, we'll see. I
Eh,
guess. This is. I just want to last sentence here. This is overreaction Monday. It's been one game. One game doesn't define everything. The first game of the year in the NFL is usually the oddest. But this doesn't seem like an outlier considering the 2 years of context of this team not scoring points. This looks like a lot of what we've already seen. So I'm it's been a whole day and I'm still mad. I'm
Yeah,
still really angry.
I'm really angry at myself because I feel like my pessimism is being validated. It's not yep, I was right, but this is starting to feel like that bad feeling I had is going to come true. And that makes me mad. And, again, it's September 9th. We have 4 months of this team to watch. And we're going to be playing some tough teams and some bad situations. And, I already had to remove Twitter already from my phone because I can't take it from the Florida side. I see assholes that are waiting around for hours after to boo Daniel Jones. You guys get farts. And if any of you listen to this show, please unsubscribe because don't make us even more of a laughing stock than we are. We all get it. And you said you have every right to boo, and I completely agree.
On the field.
Exactly. But when you make it about yourself and in a situation that you know, make the team look bad because nobody knows. They're just like, oh, look at how bad these fans are and stuff. You guys are assholes. And I don't
I
even want you
did
listening
see
to this
that.
show.
Yeah, I did see that guys did that. That's not the same. I
Of
probably should
course
have.
not.
I
Right.
probably should have clarified that. When you're booing the product on the field, it really is the whole thing. Daniel Jones is a guy just trying to play his best ball. The fact that he stinks is bad, but it's not like he doesn't know it. When we boo on the field, he knows he's a part of that, a big part of that. So there's no need for the
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not feeling bad for a guy who's going to make over $200 million in his
No.
career and has won a playoff game, but, you know, we're all human. And he knows that he is the least like athlete in the city right now. He gets that. Why just I don't know. I mean, are we just in a world now that you have to get clicks and likes so badly?
I don't.
If you are, go fuck yourselves.
Yeah. See you guys on Friday morning. We're gonna preview the Washington Commanders game. That game will not be at home, thankfully, so we can all. If that game is horrible, you can just shut your TV off. There's always that option.
Do we even want to talk about the rest of the division today? Are we just too annoyed?
Oh yeah. Around the league. Sorry, around the NFC East. The Giants are now 0-1. Washington also 0-1. They lost to Tampa Bay 37-20. Dallas beat Cleveland, and predictably, like I said, I don't know if Cleveland's really that good this year. They lost really badly. The score does not indicate how badly they got whooped, 33-17. And, we already talked we didn't talk about Philadelphia Green Bay, but
Good game.
yeah.
But the only thing we'll say, and I know it's probably been said before, is that Saquon Barkley is probably not doing those things with this offensive line and this
No,
quarterback.
probably is not even an operable word.
Yeah.
The New York Giants have a New York Giants problem. The
Mm-hmm.
rest of the league, like even just going through that, felt like a formality because they are not even remotely competitive with other teams in the league.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that we should be paying attention to the division is somewhat funny internally for me. So
Mm-hmm. No, I'm just saying for every one of you who couldn't wait to jump on look at Saquon, look at Saquon, look, I got 400 fucking texts Friday night. Look at Saquon. Don't you miss him? Don't you wish? I'm like, no. A, if he wanted to be here, he'd be here. B, you're not seeing that with this Giant offense. That's not reality. So I don't care. He's just another guy to me now. I don't hate him for going there. A he's Boston Scott to me. Just a guy on the other team, one of my rivals. That's it.
That's going to do it for this episode. So we will see you guys on Friday morning for our preview of the Washington Commanders game. And hopefully by then my blood pressure will have calmed down. So be sure to like, subscribe. We'll see you guys on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube. Until then, go
Go
Giants.
Giants.